I was carefully ironing the bright yellow dress I had bought for Emma's first birthday party when my phone buzzed against the marble counter. The sound made me smile, because I thought it might be Amy sending me last-minute details about tomorrow's celebration. "Please don't come tomorrow. Tyler wants only his family there." The message was from Amy, my daughter. No greeting, no explanation, no sorry, just a cold, brutal wall of words that hit me like a physical blow to my chest. I set the iron down with shaking hands and read the message again, hoping I had misunderstood. But the words remained the same, stark and unforgiving on the bright screen. Our last text exchange had been me asking what time to arrive at the party. She had read it immediately, but never replied. Now I understood why she had left me hanging. The cheerful yellow dress hung there on the door, had bright and optimistic, mocking my suddenly dark mood. I had spent over an hour at the department store, carefully selecting it because I thought about how Emma would laugh and clap when she saw the tiny embroidered ducks dancing across the pockets. I sank heavily into my kitchen chair and stared at the phone screen until the words blurred. 24 hours before my granddaughter's milestone birthday, and I was being uninvited like some unwelcome stranger. My hands trembled as I typed back a response that took every ounce of my dignity to write. "I understand. Have a wonderful celebration." The 3 typing dots appeared immediately, then disappeared just as quickly. No follow-up came. No explanation. No apology for the devastating blow she had just delivered. I made coffee with mechanical movements, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. I couldn't taste anything as I sipped the hot liquid, staring out the window at my neighbor's perfectly manicured lawn. I tried to picture tomorrow's party, the colorful balloons, the carefully decorated cake, the family photos that would be taken. In every image I conjured, there was a grandmother-shaped hole where I should have been standing. The silence in my house felt deafening. Usually I would be humming while I prepared for family gatherings, excited about seeing Emma take her wobbly first steps and hearing her babbled attempts at words. Instead, I sat in my kitchen, wondering how we had arrived at this moment. When had I become the family member who could be discarded so easily? When had my presence become optional rather than cherished? I thought about all the birthday parties I had attended over the years, all the celebrations where family gathered together. Never once had I imagined being deliberately excluded from my own granddaughter's special day. My name is Helen Parker, and I am 65 years old. I have been a widow for 8 long years, and I worked as a bank manager for 3 decades before retiring with a modest but comfortable pension. I live in a small 2-bedroom house that my husband and I bought 30 years ago. It's nothing fancy, but it's paid off and filled with memories. I have a decent retirement account that I've been careful with, and until today, I believed I had a close, loving relationship with my only daughter. Amy has been my whole world since her father passed away. After the funeral, we became each other's primary source of support and comfort. She called me every single Sunday without fail, visited at least twice each month, and frequently told me I was not just her mother, but her best friend. That comfortable routine began to change dramatically after she married Tyler Robinson 2 years ago. At first, I convinced myself the shift was completely normal and expected. Newlyweds naturally need space and time to build their own life together, to establish their own traditions and routines. When Emma was born 13 months ago, I genuinely expected our relationship to return to its previous closeness. I imagined myself as the doting grandmother, babysitting regularly and being deeply involved in my granddaughter's daily life. Instead, the emotional distance between Amy and me continued to grow wider with each passing month, like a chasm that kept expanding no matter how hard I tried to bridge it. I walked slowly to my small home office and pulled out the accordion file where I keep all my important papers and documents. Inside was a manila folder clearly labeled Amy's Financial Help in my careful handwriting. I had started this folder to keep track of what I thought were temporary loans during difficult times. Opening it now felt like opening Pandora's box. The first entry was from last year, when Amy was 7 months pregnant and called me in tears. "Mom, we're in serious trouble," she had sobbed into the phone. The mortgage payment went up because of some insurance issue, and Tyler's construction company cut his hours due to the weather. We might actually lose the house. I hadn't hesitated for even a moment. Within hours, I had transferred $15,000 from my carefully maintained emergency fund. It represented most of my liquid savings, money I had set aside for my own unexpected expenses. "You completely saved us," Amy had cried with relief. "I promise we'll pay you back as soon as Tyler gets steady work again and things stabilize." I told her sincerely not to worry about repaying me quickly. "Family helps family during crisis," I said. "That's what we do for each other." But looking at this folder now, I realized that single act of generosity had opened a floodgate that never closed. 2 months after that first large loan, Amy called again with another financial crisis. The baby was coming soon, and they had realized they couldn't afford to properly furnish a nursery. I gave them $5,000 without question. Then Tyler's pickup truck needed major repairs that insurance wouldn't cover. $3,000 from my account to theirs. Then Tyler had a minor accident at work and faced unexpected medical bills. $2,000 transferred immediately. Then Amy's maternity leave ran longer than anticipated, and they couldn't manage on Tyler's reduced income. $4,000 to help them through. Most recently, they needed help with Christmas expenses and a heating bill crisis. $3,500 just before the holidays. Each time I opened my wallet, they made the same heartfelt promises. "We'll pay you back when Tyler gets his promotion. As soon as the construction season picks up, we just need to get through this temporary rough patch." The word temporary appeared in my notes next to almost every entry. But temporary had somehow become permanent, and the rough patch had become their normal way of life. I added up the total with growing horror. $32,500 in less than 18 months. The number stared back at me from the page, representing years of careful saving and financial planning that had disappeared into their household budget. I closed the folder and walked to my living room, settling into the armchair where I used to read bedtime stories to Amy when she was small. My phone remained silent on the coffee table. No follow-up text explaining the birthday party situation. No phone call to soften the blow or provide context. Just that harsh, final message that slammed the door on my participation in Emma's special day. I tried to imagine what I would be doing tomorrow if things were normal. I would wake up early and wrap Emma's presents carefully. I would arrive at their house with balloons and my camera, ready to capture every moment of joy. Instead, I would wake up tomorrow and have nowhere to go, nothing special to celebrate. I would spend the day wondering what Emma looked like in her birthday dress, whether she enjoyed her cake, which family members were deemed worthy of inclusion. The rejection felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. But underneath the hurt, I felt something else growing, a cold, clear anger that I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge before. For over a year, I had been their reliable source of emergency funding. Every time they called with a crisis, I responded with immediate financial help and emotional support. But when it came time to include me in their joy, in their celebrations, in their family moments, I was suddenly unnecessary. I was good enough to solve their money problems, but not good enough to share their happiness. The next morning, I called my best friend Carol, who has been my neighbor and closest confidant for 15 years. "Carol, I need to tell you something," I said, settling into my kitchen chair with a cup of coffee I didn't really want. "What's wrong, honey? You sound upset." "I got uninvited to Emma's birthday party yesterday. Amy sent me a text saying Tyler only wants his family there." Carol was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically hear her choosing her words carefully. "Helen, can I ask you something that might be uncomfortable?" "Of course. Have you looked at your bank statements lately? I mean, really looked, not just checking the balance?" I frowned, confused by the seemingly random question. "What do you mean exactly?" "I mean examining where your money is actually going, all of it." Something in her tone made me nervous. I pulled up my online banking website while we continued talking. "Amy has limited access for small emergencies," I explained. "Just $50 or $100 here and there for groceries or gas when they're short." I had set up this arrangement 6 months ago when Amy mentioned that budgeting was difficult with a baby and irregular work schedules. Helen, just humor me and scroll through your recent transactions carefully. As I began examining the detailed list, my stomach started to sink with each line item. The transaction history told a story I hadn't been paying attention to, and it was far worse than I had imagined. In addition to the major loans I had carefully documented, there was a steady stream of smaller withdrawals that I had barely noticed individually. $25 to DoorDash food delivery, $47 to Target, $63 to something called Tyler's Gaming subscription, $35 to a streaming service I had never heard of, $55 to a restaurant I knew was expensive, $78 to a baby boutique that sold designer clothes, $29 to a coffee shop that charged premium prices. "Carol," I whispered into the phone, my voice barely audible. "I think they've been taking money without asking me first." "Oh, honey," she said softly, her voice full of sympathy and understanding. I continued scrolling, and the pattern became increasingly clear. What had started as legitimate small emergencies had gradually evolved into routine funding of their lifestyle choices. The most painful discovery was a transfer for $120 on the exact same day that Amy had told me they couldn't afford gas money to visit me for my birthday last month. According to my bank records, they had used my money that same day to pay for dinner at an upscale restaurant across town. "I've been such an idiot," I said, feeling tears start to blur my vision. "No, you've been a loving mother and grandmother. They're the ones who chose to take advantage of that love." I spent the entire weekend systematically going through every bank statement from the past 12 months, printing pages and highlighting transactions with different colored pens. The pattern that emerged was both clear and devastating. Amy had gradually and systematically increased both the frequency and the amounts of these emergency transfers. It had started innocently enough. $20 for baby medicine when Emma was sick, $50 when their debit card was unexpectedly declined at the grocery store during a shopping trip. But somewhere along the way, it had transformed from genuine emergencies into routine subsidizing of their daily expenses and entertainment choices. I found transfers for expensive restaurants they visited regularly, designer baby clothes that cost more than my own outfits, subscription boxes for everything from coffee to cosmetics, and entertainment expenses that exceeded my own monthly fund budget. The most painful discovery was a series of transfers totaling $400 that occurred over the same weekend that Amy had told me they couldn't afford to visit for my birthday because gas prices were too high. According to the transaction details and timestamps, they had spent my money on a weekend trip to Tyler's brother's wedding celebration, a wedding to which I had not been invited and had never even been told about. I printed everything and organized it chronologically in a new folder that I labeled Financial Abuse in red ink. The term felt strong and accusatory, but as I looked at the evidence spread across my dining room table, I realized that's exactly what this pattern represented. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I called my bank as soon as they opened and requested to speak with a manager about some urgent account security issues. "I need to close shared access on my accounts and establish new security measures immediately," I told Mr. Williams, the branch manager who had helped me when my husband died. He was professional and discreet, asking only the necessary questions without prying into my personal situation. Within 90 minutes, I had completely closed Amy's access to all my accounts and set up automatic alerts for any transaction over $25. I changed every single online password and updated all my security questions with information that Amy wouldn't know or be able to guess. When the bank representative asked if I wanted them to notify the previous account holder about these changes, I firmly declined. "I'll handle any necessary communication myself," I said. Driving home with my new debit cards and updated account information, I felt physically lighter than I had in months. For the first time in over a year, my money was completely and entirely under my own control. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Amy. "Mom, something weird happened. My card got declined at the store. Can you check if there's some kind of problem with the account access?" I typed and deleted at least 5 different responses, ranging from explanatory to angry, before settling on a simple, direct statement. I've closed the shared access arrangement. All my accounts are now exclusively private. My phone rang immediately, but I let it go straight to voicemail. When I finally listened to Amy's voicemail message an hour later, her voice was sharp with indignation and barely contained anger. "Mom, what is this about? You can't just cut off our access like that without warning. Call me back right now so we can discuss this situation." The tone was demanding rather than apologetic, entitled rather than understanding. There was no acknowledgement of the birthday party exclusion, no recognition that her behavior might have prompted my actions. I deleted the message and turned off my phone for the rest of the evening. Tuesday brought a series of increasingly frantic text messages as Amy realized that her access to my accounts was permanently revoked, not just temporarily disrupted. "This is really inconvenient timing, Mom. We have bills scheduled to come out of that account." "You're being unreasonable. Families help each other through difficult times. Tyler's family thinks you're overreacting to a simple misunderstanding about the party." I read each message but didn't respond to any of them. For the first time in our relationship, I was setting a boundary and refusing to be manipulated into immediate compliance. That evening, Amy showed up at my front door with Emma on her hip and Tyler trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. "Mom, we need to talk about this situation," she announced, pushing past me into my living room without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door and followed them, my heart aching as Emma reached her little arms toward me with a bright smile. I took Emma gratefully, grateful for at least one family member who still seemed happy to see me. Her warm weight in my arms was a comfort I hadn't realized I desperately needed. "You can't just cut off our access like that without any discussion," Amy said, her voice tight with frustration. "We depend on that money for important family expenses." Tyler nodded emphatically. "It's really inconvenient, Helen. We have automatic payments set up and bills that depend on that account being accessible." I looked at him carefully, noting his defensive posture and entitled tone. "What kind of bills exactly?" He shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet my eyes directly. "You know, important stuff for Emma. Regular family expenses that can't wait." "I've reviewed the statements thoroughly," I said quietly but firmly. "Gaming subscriptions and restaurant deliveries aren't family necessities." Amy's face flushed bright red with embarrassment and anger. "Those were legitimate emergencies. You don't understand how expensive and stressful it is to raise a baby while managing a household." "Then maybe you shouldn't have excluded me from her birthday party," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. The room fell completely silent, except for Emma's happy babbling as she played with my necklace, blissfully unaware of the adult tension surrounding her. "That was Tyler's decision about his family dynamics," Amy said finally, her voice smaller but still defensive. "And this is my decision about my money and my boundaries," I replied calmly. Tyler's face darkened with anger, but he seemed to realize that arguing further would only make their situation worse. After they left, with Tyler muttering under his breath and Amy shooting wounded looks over her shoulder, I felt emotionally drained but somehow cleaner, as if I had finally removed a splinter that had been festering for months. I called my lawyer, Mr. Patterson, first thing the next morning. I had used his services when my husband died, and I trusted both his legal expertise and his discretion in sensitive family matters. "I need to update my will and discuss options for protecting my assets," I told him, explaining briefly that I was having some family financial issues. We scheduled a meeting for Thursday morning at his downtown office. I spent the next 2 days gathering financial records, account statements, and documentation of all the money I had given Amy and Tyler over the past 18 months. Thursday morning, I sat across from Mr. Patterson's desk and laid out the entire situation. The loans, the gradual increase in demands, the unauthorized withdrawals, and finally the birthday party exclusion that had opened my eyes to the true nature of our relationship. Mr. Patterson listened without judgment, taking careful notes on his yellow legal pad and asking clarifying questions about dates and amounts. "Helen, you've been extraordinarily generous with your daughter and her family," he said when I finished my explanation. "But generosity without boundaries often becomes exploitation, even among family members. He explained several options for protecting my assets while still providing for Amy's future, including establishing trusts with specific conditions and limitations. "What about Amy's inheritance?" I asked. "She's still my daughter, and I still love her." "A properly structured trust can provide for her future while protecting you now," he explained patiently. Mr. Patterson outlined how a trust could specify exactly how and when Amy might receive money, with built-in safeguards to prevent the kind of financial abuse I had been experiencing. "We can establish provisions that require financial counseling, matching contributions from Amy and Tyler, or specific life goals to be met before any distributions are made," he explained. The idea of maintaining some financial connection to Amy's future while protecting myself in the present felt like exactly the balance I needed. We scheduled another appointment for the following week to draft all the necessary paperwork and make my wishes legally binding. Walking out of his office that Thursday afternoon, I felt like I was finally taking proper care of myself for the first time in many months. I was no longer just reacting to Amy's demands or trying to maintain peace at any cost. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I went shopping, purely for my own enjoyment. I visited the art supply store and bought a watercolor set I had been admiring for months. I went to the bookstore and selected 3 novels I wanted to read. I stopped at the plant nursery and chose flowers for my front porch containers. At the grocery store, I bought expensive imported cheese and a bottle of wine I had always wanted to try. I selected ingredients for my favorite meal without considering whether that money could be better spent helping Amy and Tyler. For dinner, I prepared salmon with fresh herbs and roasted vegetables, set my dining room table with my good china and cloth napkins, and lit the candles my husband had given me years ago. I ate slowly and mindfully, actually tasting each bite instead of rushing through the meal while worrying about Amy's next crisis. After dinner, I opened the watercolor set and attempted to paint a simple flower. My technique was rusty, and the results were amateur, but the process brought me a deep sense of satisfaction and peace. I realized with startling clarity that I couldn't remember the last time I had spent money on something purely because it brought me happiness, without calculating whether those funds might be needed for one of Amy's emergencies. For the past 18 months, every purchase decision had been filtered through the question of whether Amy might need that money more than I did. Every small luxury had been weighed against the possibility of an urgent phone call requesting financial help. Now I understood that my money belonged to me, and spending it on my own happiness and well-being wasn't selfish. It was necessary and healthy. Amy texted sporadically over the next week, alternating between different emotional approaches to try to restore her access to my accounts. First came guilt. "Emma misses her grandma so much. Why are you being stubborn about something that doesn't really matter?" Then direct anger. "You're being completely ridiculous. Family members help each other during difficult times." Finally, manipulation. "Tyler's parents think you're being selfish and unreasonable. Is that really the reputation you want in our family?" I read each message but didn't respond to any of them. Each failed attempt at manipulation actually strengthened my resolve to maintain my new boundaries. Wednesday morning, Carol came over for coffee and found me sitting at my kitchen table with my watercolor supplies spread out, working on a small landscape painting. "You look completely different," she observed, settling into her chair with her coffee mug. Relaxed and peaceful. I realized Carol was absolutely right. The constant underlying anxiety about Amy's next financial crisis had been emotionally exhausting in ways I hadn't fully appreciated until it was gone. Not having to mentally prepare for emergency phone calls or unexpected demands had given me energy and peace of mind that I had forgotten I was capable of feeling. "I do feel guilty sometimes," I admitted to Carol. "She's my daughter, and I love her." "And you're her mother? Not her personal bank account," Carol replied firmly. "There's an important difference between helping someone and enabling them to avoid responsibility." She was absolutely right. I had been enabling Amy and Tyler to avoid making difficult budget decisions and lifestyle changes that would have improved their financial stability. By always being available to solve their money problems, I had inadvertently prevented them from learning to solve those problems themselves. That evening, I made a decision that felt both necessary and frightening. I blocked Amy's phone number. If she genuinely needed to reach me for a real emergency, she could call from Tyler's phone or visit me in person. I wasn't cutting off all communication, but I was refusing to be available for continued manipulation and emotional pressure. The house felt quieter that night, but it was a peaceful quiet rather than a lonely one. 2 weeks later, Mr. Patterson called with an update on my legal documents. "Your new will is completed and ready for your signature," he informed me. "I've also prepared the trust document that will protect your assets while providing controlled future support for Amy." We met the following morning to review every detail of the new arrangements. The new will was dramatically different from the simple document I had signed years earlier. Instead of leaving everything directly to Amy in one lump sum, I had created a structured trust that would provide her with carefully controlled financial support. The trust included strict guidelines: no access to the principal amount, no ability to borrow against future distributions, and all payments required approval from an independent trustee who understood my intentions. I had named Carol as my executor and primary trustee. She understood my situation completely and wouldn't be swayed by guilt, manipulation, or emotional appeals that weren't in Amy's best long-term interests. The trust also included provisions for Emma and any future grandchildren, ensuring that money intended for their education and welfare couldn't be diverted to adult lifestyle expenses. "Are you completely certain about these arrangements?" Mr. Patterson asked before I signed the final documents. I thought carefully about the past year of constant financial demands, the birthday party, exclusion, the unauthorized withdrawals, and the way Tyler looked at me like I was a human ATM machine rather than a family member. "I'm absolutely certain," I said, and signed my name with a steady hand. The original documents went into Mr. Patterson's secure safe. I placed copies in my home safe and mailed a complete set to Carol for her records. For the first time since my husband's death, I felt confident that my final wishes would be respected and my assets would be used according to my values rather than someone else's demands. A full month passed without any contact from Amy or Tyler. I kept myself busy and engaged with watercolor classes at the community center, starting a small vegetable garden in my backyard, and joining a book club that met at the local library. The book club met every Tuesday evening at Carol's house with 6 other women my age who had interesting life stories and didn't need anything from me except friendship and thoughtful discussion about the novels we read together. We explored mysteries and romance novels, drank herbal tea, and laughed about ridiculous plot twists and unlikely character decisions. "This is the most genuine fun I've had in years," I told Carol after one particularly enjoyable meeting where we had debated the merits of various detective stories. "That's because you're not constantly worrying about solving someone else's problems," she observed wisely. "You're just being Helen Parker, not Helen the perpetual problem solver." She was absolutely right. For months, I had defined my identity primarily as Amy's mother and Emma's grandmother, forgetting that I was also Helen Parker, a complete person with my own interests, dreams, and desires. I started taking photography classes at the community center and learned to properly use the expensive camera my husband had given me several years before his death. My photographs weren't technically perfect, but they captured moments and scenes that brought me genuine joy. I took pictures because I enjoyed the creative process, not because I wanted to impress anyone or share them on social media. I was rediscovering aspects of my personality that had been buried under months of worry about Amy's financial crisis and emotional demands. In October, my peaceful routine was interrupted by a phone call from Tyler's number. "Helen, we need to discuss an important family situation," Tyler said, his voice attempting a formal tone that didn't quite hide his underlying anxiety. "What's the situation?" I asked carefully, already dreading what was coming next. "Amy's pregnant again," Tyler announced. "We just found out last week." My first instinct was pure joy, another grandchild to love and watch grow. But my second thought was immediate concern about what new financial demands this pregnancy would bring. Congratulations, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral and warm. The thing is, we're having some serious financial difficulties, Tyler continued, getting to the real purpose of his call. This pregnancy is considered high risk because of some complications Amy had with Emma, and she might need to stop working earlier than planned. We were hoping you could help with the medical bills and lost income. There it was, exactly as I had expected. Not an invitation to be part of the pregnancy journey, to attend doctor appointments, or to help prepare for the baby's arrival. Just another request for money to solve their problems. I'm not providing financial assistance anymore, I said firmly but calmly. But this is your grandchild we're talking about, Tyler argued, his voice rising with frustration. Don't you want what's best for the baby and Amy's health? I want what's best for everyone, I replied steadily. And what's best is for you and Amy to handle your own financial responsibilities like adults. The line went silent for several seconds before Tyler hung up without saying goodbye, clearly angry that his appeal had failed. That evening, Amy called from Tyler's phone, and her voice was thick with tears and desperation. Mom, please, she begged. I know we've had problems and disagreements, but this situation is different. I really need you now. If you genuinely need me, I said carefully, then you need to start treating me like beloved family instead of like a bank that you can access whenever you have financial problems. Amy was quiet for a long moment, apparently surprised by my directness. What exactly do you mean by that? She asked. When was the last time you invited me to dinner just to spend time together? When did you last ask about my life, my health, my interests? When did you last include me in Emma's important milestones or memorable moments? Amy couldn't provide answers to any of those questions because the honest answers would have revealed the one-sided nature of our relationship. You excluded me from Emma's first birthday party because Tyler's family was supposedly more important, I continued. But now you want my money because you're facing financial difficulties. I'm really sorry about the birthday party, she said quietly, her voice smaller and less defensive. Tyler was dealing with some complicated family drama with his parents, and he thought it would be easier to keep the gathering small and simple. Easier for whom? I interrupted. Not easier for me. Not easier for Emma, who should know her grandmother and have her in important memories. Amy started crying harder. I honestly don't know how to fix this situation between us. Start by being my daughter instead of just being someone who contacts me when you need money, I said. She promised tearfully to do better, to include me more in their lives, to make our relationship a genuine priority rather than a financial convenience. I had heard virtually identical promises before, multiple times. This time, I wanted to see consistent actions rather than emotional words. I told Amy that I would consider helping with pregnancy-related medical expenses, but only if she and Tyler could demonstrate that they were making serious efforts to manage their finances responsibly on their own. Show me a realistic budget, I said. Prove to me that you've eliminated unnecessary expenses and are living within your actual means. A week later, they arrived at my house with a handwritten budget that was obviously fabricated and completely unrealistic. They claimed to spend only $50 per month on entertainment, but I had seen Tyler's gaming subscription charges that exceeded that amount by themselves. They listed their grocery budget as $300 monthly, but I knew from their social media posts that they ordered expensive restaurant deliveries several times each week. They claimed no miscellaneous expenses, despite the fact that my bank records showed regular charges for subscription boxes, premium streaming services, and expensive coffee shop visits. This budget isn't honest or accurate, I said, handing the papers back to them. You're not ready to have a serious conversation about financial responsibility. Tyler became immediately defensive and argumentative. We don't have to prove anything to you. You're family, and family members should help each other without conditions or judgments. Family relationships work in both directions, I said calmly. I've helped you financially for over a year. What have you done to help me or show appreciation for that assistance? They couldn't answer because the honest answer was that they had done nothing except take my money and exclude me from their family celebrations. I asked them to leave and think seriously about whether they wanted a genuine relationship with me or just continued access to my financial resources. 2 weeks later, Amy came to my house alone while Tyler was at work. She looked tired and older than her 28 years, and her usual confident demeanor seemed shaken. "Mom, I've been thinking constantly about what you said to us," she began hesitantly. "And you're absolutely right about everything. We have taken advantage of your generosity and kindness." She settled carefully into my living room chair, her hands folded protectively over her still small pregnancy bump. "I allowed Tyler to convince me that asking you for money was completely normal because you're my mother," she continued. "But it's not normal to exclude you from Emma's life and our celebrations while expecting you to solve all our financial problems." I listened carefully, trying to determine whether this was genuine remorse and self-reflection or simply another manipulation technique designed to restore access to my bank account. "I genuinely want to repair our relationship," Amy said, looking directly at me. "But I honestly don't know how to begin fixing all the damage that's been done." "Start by including me in your life," I said simply. "Not just when you need money, but during the good times and ordinary moments too." She nodded earnestly. "Would you like to have lunch with Emma and me this week? Just the three of us, no Tyler, no agenda." It was a small step, but her tone seemed sincere rather than calculated. "I'd like that very much," I said. We made plans for the following Thursday, and for the first time in many months, I felt cautiously hopeful about the possibility of rebuilding our relationship on healthier foundations. Thursday's lunch was awkward and tentative at first, but Emma's delighted giggles and obvious affection for me helped break through the initial tension between Amy and me. Amy actually asked genuine questions about my photography classes and seemed truly interested in my answers rather than just politely waiting for her turn to talk. "I had completely forgotten how much you've always loved art and creative projects," she said, watching me help Emma color with crayons. "I remember when you used to set up painting sessions with me at the kitchen table when I was little." I did remember those Saturday morning art sessions fondly. We would spread newspapers across the table and spend hours with watercolors and construction paper, creating masterpieces that I displayed proudly on the refrigerator. "We could do art projects with Emma when she's a little older," I suggested tentatively. Amy's face lit up with the first genuine smile I had seen from her in months. "I would really love that. She's already showing signs of being creative and artistic." We talked about Amy's pregnancy, and she shared her fears about managing 2 young children while Tyler worked irregular construction hours. "Tyler's been really stressed about money," she admitted quietly. "He sometimes takes that stress out on me, and it makes everything harder." I heard something troubling in her voice, but I didn't push for details. I remembered reading that pressuring someone in a difficult relationship often drives them further away from help. We made plans to meet again the following week, and Amy hugged me goodbye with what felt like genuine warmth. "I've really missed you, Mom," she said softly. "I've missed you too, sweetheart." Over the next several weeks, Amy made consistent efforts to include me more meaningfully in her daily life and Emma's development. She invited me to accompany them to Emma's pediatric appointments and sent me photos of the toddler's latest achievements and milestones. We established a routine of having lunch together twice each week, and Amy started calling on Sunday evenings just to chat about our lives. But I noticed that she never mentioned Tyler in these conversations, and she always came to see me alone, rather than including him in our visits. When I asked about Tyler directly, Amy became vague and evasive. "He's working extra hours," or "he's not feeling well today." I began to suspect there were serious problems in their marriage that went far beyond financial stress. One Thursday afternoon, Amy arrived for our usual lunch date with a dark bruise clearly visible on her wrist. "What happened to your arm?" I asked with immediate concern. She quickly pulled her sleeve down to cover the mark. "I fell yesterday carrying groceries up the stairs. You know how clumsy I can be sometimes." I didn't believe her explanation, but I didn't push for more details. I remembered advice from domestic violence resources that confronting someone too directly often causes them to retreat and become more isolated. Instead, I told her gently that I was always available if she needed anything at all, day or night. Anything? She asked, looking at me intently. Absolutely anything, I confirmed. No questions asked. Something in her expression told me she would remember that promise. In late November, Amy called me at midnight, her voice shaking with fear and desperation. "Mom, can you please come get Emma and me right now? Tyler came home drunk and angry, and I'm scared for our safety." I was dressed and in my car within 5 minutes, my heart pounding with adrenaline and worry. I found Amy and Emma sitting on their front porch in the cold, with a hastily packed diaper bag and small suitcase beside them. "What happened?" I asked, helping them into my warm car. "Tyler lost his job last week, but he didn't tell me," Amy explained as I drove toward my house. "He's been spending his days drinking and gambling online instead of looking for work. Tonight I found out about the job and asked him to stop gambling with money we don't have." Emma was asleep in her car seat, blissfully unaware of the adult crisis surrounding her. "He threw a dinner plate at the kitchen wall and started yelling," Amy continued. "He's never been physically violent before, but his behavior tonight really scared me." I took them to my house and quickly set up the guest room with fresh sheets and extra blankets. "You can stay here as long as you need," I told Amy sincerely. "Both of you." "I don't have any money to pay you rent or expenses," she said, looking embarrassed and vulnerable. "I'm not asking you to pay me anything," I said firmly. "I'm asking you to be safe and take care of yourself and Emma." For the first time in our entire relationship, I was offering help without being asked for money, and Amy was accepting help without making financial demands. The difference felt profound and healing for both of us. Amy and Emma stayed with me for 3 weeks, and during that time, I saw my daughter clearly for the first time in years. Without Tyler's negative influence and constant financial pressure, Amy was the caring, thoughtful, responsible person I remembered from her childhood. She helped with cooking and household tasks without being asked. She was patient and attentive with Emma, and she expressed genuine gratitude for my support. "I had forgotten how peaceful and calm it feels here," she said one evening as we watched Emma play with wooden blocks on my living room floor. "It feels peaceful because there's no constant financial stress and crisis," I observed. "When you're not worried about money every day, you can focus on what really matters." Amy nodded thoughtfully. "Tyler and I fought about money almost constantly. It poisoned everything else in our relationship." "What do you want to do about your situation?" I asked gently. "I want to leave him permanently," she said quietly but decisively. "But I don't know how to support myself and Emma and this new baby on my own." I had money that I could simply give her, but I had learned the crucial difference between helping someone and enabling them to avoid responsibility. "I'll help you create a realistic plan," I said. "But you'll need to do the actual work to build an independent life." We spent the following week researching Amy's options thoroughly and realistically. She could qualify for temporary financial assistance, food support, and subsidized housing while she returned to school for job training. I offered to pay for childcare costs so she could complete a nursing program at the community college. "That's a 2-year commitment," I explained. "But when you graduate, you'll have a stable career that can support your family independently." Amy was frightened by the prospect of such a major life change, but she was also determined to create a better future. "I want Emma to see me taking care of myself and our family, not depending on other people or accepting unacceptable behavior," she said. I was incredibly proud of her for choosing the more difficult path that would lead to genuine independence and self-respect. Tyler called constantly during those weeks, alternating between promises to change and threats to take Emma away. Amy blocked his number and filed for a protective order through the county courthouse. "I should have done this months ago," she admitted. "I was just too scared and overwhelmed to be alone." "You're not alone," I assured her. "You have me, and more importantly, you have your own strength. That's enough to build on." Amy found a modest 2-bedroom apartment near the community college and moved out just before Christmas. I helped her with the security deposit and first month's rent, but we established a formal written agreement that this was a loan with a realistic repayment schedule. "I want to pay you back for everything eventually," she said, as we set up her new kitchen. "It might take several years, but I'm committed to making it right." "Focus on school and taking care of the girls," I said. "The money will work itself out over time." On Christmas morning, Amy brought Emma over to my house to open presents and spend the day together. "I have something special for you," Amy said, handing me a small wrapped box with nervous excitement. Inside was a framed photograph of Emma and me from one of our recent art sessions, with "Grandma's Girl" inscribed on the mat. "I'm deeply sorry that I kept her away from you," Amy said, her eyes filling with tears. "That was completely wrong, and it will never happen again." We spent Christmas Day cooking traditional family recipes together and playing with Emma, exactly as I had imagined during that painful birthday party exclusion. Tyler appeared at my front door that afternoon, demanding to see Emma, but Amy stood firm and confident. "You can see her when the court says you can, and only under supervised conditions," she told him calmly. I was tremendously proud of her newfound strength and determination to protect her children. 2 years later, Amy graduated from nursing school with high honors, and I was sitting proudly in the front row of the auditorium for her commencement ceremony. She had maintained a spot on the dean's list for both years while raising Emma and her new daughter, Sophie, who was born healthy and happy 6 months after Amy started school. After graduation, Amy was immediately hired at the Children's Hospital with excellent pay and comprehensive benefits. "I actually did it, Mom," she said, hugging me tightly after the ceremony. "I really, truly did it." "You absolutely did," I agreed, feeling overwhelming pride and joy. "I'm so incredibly proud of you." Amy had faithfully paid me back a small amount each month throughout school, exactly as she had promised. The amounts weren't large, but they were consistent and honest. More importantly, she had completely rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection, rather than financial need and manipulation. She included me meaningfully in both girls' lives, asked for my advice on parenting decisions, and called regularly just to share news and conversation. "I want Emma and Sophie to really know their grandmother," she said. "The real you, not just someone who gives them money when their parents need help." Tyler had remarried and moved to another state for work. He saw the girls every other weekend when he was in town, but he was no longer the controlling center of Amy's world. Today, Emma is 4 years old, and Sophie is 2. They spend every Saturday afternoon with me, learning to paint watercolors and helping me tend my vegetable garden. Amy stops by for coffee most Sunday mornings, and we talk about everything: her work challenges, my book club discussions, the girls' latest adventures and achievements. Last month, she brought me a card for no particular reason. Inside, she had written, "Thank you for loving me enough to stop enabling my mistakes. I'm a better person and mother because you made me stronger." I keep that card on my kitchen table where I can see it every morning with my coffee. The money I gave them during their crisis is mostly gone, spent on their old life of financial chaos and poor decisions. But the money I didn't give them helped Amy build a new life of stability, independence, and self-respect. Sometimes the most loving gift you can give someone is saying no to their requests for easy solutions and yes to their potential for growth and strength. My relationship with Amy is stronger and more authentic now than it ever was when I was funding their lifestyle and solving their problems. She loves me for who I am as a person, not for what I can provide financially. And Emma and Sophie know me as Grandma, the lady who teaches them to paint flowers and grows the best tomatoes in the neighborhood. That genuine love and connection is worth more than any amount of money I could have given away.